Biden, who yesterday traveled to Texas. So in Austin, Texas, he spoke at the LBJ Library. Of course, he was marking the 60th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act signing. Being signed, and but then he also added more on the reforms that he is aiming to pass during this 6 month while he's still in office, reforming the Supreme Court. And so, first, let's watch a short video of him announcing the reforms and how actually he came to it. And then we discuss further. Okay? So, let's watch our first video.
I have great respect for our institutions and the separation of powers laid out in our Constitution. But what's happening now is not consistent with that doctrine of separation of powers. Extremism is undermining the public confidence in the court's decisions. As soon as I came to office, I convened a bipartisan presidential commission on the Supreme Court of the United States, comprised of leading constitutional scholars, both liberal and conservative, to provide recommendations on potential reforms to the court. I've been careful in these deliberations because these are serious, serious decisions. In the face of increasing threats to American democratic institutions, I use the Commission's analysis, and today I'm calling for 3 bold reforms to restore trust and accountability to the court and our democracy. As the press shouted to me as I got off Air Force One, the Republican Speaker of the House said, whatever he proposes is dead on arrival. Well, I think his thinking is dead on arrival.
So mind you, he said, I think his thinking is dead on arrival. Of course, to remind you, those 3 reforms are: first, no immunity. So no kings, no queens, nobody above the law, as President mentioned in his op-ed in Washington Post yesterday, that people rule in the United States. Hence, it is a democracy. Demos kratos. People rule. Second was the limits, term limits for Supreme Court justices that would be appointed every 2 years with 18 years in service. And then third, ethics code. So in case any judge or justice that is being considered or is already on the court is receiving gifts from any entity, any foreign entity, any business, or anybody who would be interested in a certain ruling going their way, right, has to disclose it and then would be disqualified. So those 3 rules are bold. And now let's pay attention to this comment, right? Because that really sort of zhuzhed everybody up today and in Congress, as well as in White House press briefing that I'm covering. And so let's check out the video where reporters asked whether President Biden, threatened Mike Johnson. What does it mean to be dead on arrival? Meanwhile, he said his thinking is dead on arrival. Take a look.
And talked about how his idea basically was dead on arrival, the speaker's idea. He actually talked about it, and he said he reiterated what the speaker said about the SCOTUS reforms announcement, and then he said that his idea was dead on arrival. So I would just refer you to the president himself and how he addressed this directly.
And I saw some comments. Is Biden threatening Johnson? No, he said his thinking is dead on arrival. Also to remind you that yesterday, when President was traveling, he also had brief interaction with the press pool where he said to the question whether he will succeed passing the reform, since the Senate and Congress both would not be interested in passing those reforms, he said, we will find a way. To my point, I think it would be quite ironic if he used his immunity to cancel out the immunity for former future presidents. I think that would be really cool, really ironic, really playing chess than checkers. But Mitch McConnell was really displeased with those reforms, and he referred to that as dismantling and canceling out Supreme Court. Take a listen.
They decided the time has come to eliminate the Supreme Court as we know it. In his op-ed, the president says he wants term limits as on justices. Never mind what the Constitution says. Never mind the advice and consent role of the Senate. President Biden and his leftist allies don't like the current composition of the court, so they want to shred the Constitution to change it. He wants what he calls an ethics code, but that already exists. What the president is actually proposing is a stealth process for people other than the justices to decide cases. Again,
where are those term limits when you need them?